How's it going, Star Seekers? I hope you're all doing okay, and welcome back to the channel for another indie game review, where today we're going to be taking a look at a game that I've been looking forward to for a while, RetroMania Wrestling. Heavily influenced by the wrestling games of the 90s, RetroMania Wrestling features classic arcade style wrestling, a roster of 16 vintage wrestlers, and 3 distinct game modes. With its 16-bit visuals, the game sure looks the part, but how do the retro gameplay mechanics hold up in the modern era, and should you pick up RetroMania Wrestling or just tap out with this one? Let's get into this review and find out. So hot on the heels of MDickies Wrestling Empire, which saw a successful launch a couple of months back, RetroMania Wrestling aims to cater for fans of old school wrestling games, and much like those games, this one keeps it simple in terms of both its controls and gameplay mechanics. So hitting the main menu we get 3 game modes to choose from, the first of which is Story Mode. Now unfortunately there's no character creation system in RetroMania Wrestling, which I thought was a bit of a shame, and instead the story mode sees you follow the return of Johnny Retro, a has-been wrestling legend who, after suffering an injury which put him out of action for some time, has decided to make his big comeback, and you get to decide exactly how this happens. Now we start the story mode in Stevie Richards' fitness gym, where Stevie himself literally shows us the ropes, teaching us the game's controls, which, as I've said before, are pretty simple. We move our character around with the D-pad or left analog stick, perform light attacks with the Y button, medium attacks with the B button, and heavy attacks with the A button. Successfully landing these attacks though is down to how much momentum we have, indicated by a segmented bar below our character's health bar. As we dish out beatings on our opponents, this bar will slowly fill, with 1 bar enabling us to land medium moves more often and 2 bars allowing heavy moves to land. Now while this does have an impact on your standard moves, where it's most important is within grapple moves. Moving your character towards an opponent and making contact with them will initiate a grapple, from which you can then perform light, medium or heavy moves by hitting the relevant button along with a direction. However, if your momentum is too low, the move will fail and your opponent will instantly counter your move with one of their own. You can also perform an Irish whip on your opponent after successfully winning a grapple, and this will allow you to manoeuvre them and propel them off the ropes or into a corner, ready for you to follow up with another move. Now, to be perfectly honest, I found the game's combat mechanics a little hit or miss at times. While I like the simplicity of it and it brought back good memories of a simpler time in gaming, I did find that it involved a hell of a lot of button mashing, and after about 3 matches my thumb was already starting to ache. I also found the grapple mechanics were a little frustrating, as each time you lock up with an opponent, there's a moment where your character will flash green, at which point you can quickly tap a button to win the grapple. However, I would often be trading blows with another wrestler, mashing away at the Y button when a grapple would occur, and because I was still trying to punch, I would instantly lose the grapple and end up in a struggle for power, which once more required me to mash the face buttons as fast as I could to win the grapple. Other times I'd purposefully go in for a grapple with my thumb poised to catch the green flash, but then it just wouldn't come, and my delayed button mashing would result in my opponent winning the grapple. Overall though, RetroMania Wrestling's combat system is still pretty decent, and there is some skill involved in winning bouts, but there is also a lot of random luck involved, as you sometimes find yourself instantly winning grapples or countering your opponent's moves. Now back to the story, after you're done training, you then enter your first match against the Blue Meanie, which is a standard one-on-one matchup with a pin or submission securing the win. In order to successfully pin your opponent or make them tap out, you need to reduce the health bar down, or else they'll quickly break out and get a free counter attack. Chipping down your opponent's health is a simple case of laying the smackdown on them, but things get a little more tactical when it comes to tag team matches, as you're able to recover the red portion of your health if you manage to tag in your teammate, and when going for the pin you take control of the other character, using it to defend against your opponent's partner. Now while progressing through the story mode, you get to make decisions along the way which steer your story in different directions, and the choices that you make will then result in different rivalries and alliances, and thus different kinds of matches. I thought this was a pretty cool way of giving the story mode some replayability, and I like the interactions between the different characters. Now moving on to the other game modes, first we have a mode called £10 of Gold. This is another single player mode where you play as one of the game's wrestlers and you get to face off against the rest of the roster of characters on your way to facing Nick Aldis for the Heavyweight Championship belt. Like story mode, some of the matchups you face in this mode can be quite challenging at times, and while you are able to change the difficulties of NPC opponents in the options, to me it felt like they automatically became easier after you lose a match to them and then retry it. Now the third game mode in RetroMania Wrestling is called Retro Rumble, and out of all the game modes this is the most manic as it sees all 16 wrestlers duking it out with up to 8 wrestlers in the ring at any one time. Now you are able to set the parameters of the fight, specifying how many should start in the ring and how often new wrestlers should enter, but once the ring is filled and the fists are flying it can be difficult to keep track of your wrestler. Luckily in the options menu though there's something called player rings, which sticks a coloured ring beneath your wrestler to help you out a little. The game's final mode is called Versus mode, and this allows you to create your own custom matchups. Here you can select the type of bout, including one-on-one matchups, tag teams of different sizes or free-for-alls, and you can also set each match's parameters, toggling things like ring out, eliminations or tornado tag teams, where all members of the team are in the ring at once. Finally, you're also able to customise the ring, selecting from a large assortment of visual designs, and if you choose to, you can even pop a cage around it, allowing for some high-flying aerial manoeuvres. Now both Retro Rumble and Versus mode supports up to 4 human players, though each player requires their own set of Joy-Cons. Unfortunately though, multiplayer is only local, which I thought was a bit of a shame, as I feel multiplayer battles is where the most fun is to be had with wrestling games, and it would have been great to take it online against other players, but for now we can only hope to see it integrated at some point in the future. Now when it comes to my opinions on the visuals, I thought the team did a fantastic job with the game's artwork and sprites. They managed to capture the essence of all those classic 16-bit wrestling games, did a great job with each of the roster members, and the game's frame rate also holds up well even when the ring is full of carnage. Audio wise, things are also pretty good, with some nice retro sound effects giving each kick, punch and body slam a weighty punch. The ambient arena sounds from the crowd and the commentators' sound effects are also decent, though I did find some of the game's voiceovers were a little odd sounding to say the least.
Now go for the next match.
In all, I thought RetroMania Wrestling did a good job of recapturing the spirit of classic wrestling games, despite it being a little heavy on the button mashing and its roster of characters not being the most memorable. It's well worth a play if you're looking for a big hit of nostalgia, especially if you can get a bunch of friends round for some local multiplayer. When it comes to my own personal rating of the game, I'm going to be giving RetroMania Wrestling 4 out of 5 stars. If you love the wrestling games of the 90s and have been looking for a modern wrestling game that embraces those retro vibes, then look no further than RetroMania Wrestling. You can get RetroMania Wrestling from the UK Switch eShop, where it's usually priced at £22.19p, or from the US eShop, where it's usually $29.99. Alternatively, the game is also available on Xbox and Steam, and will soon be coming to PlayStation. And that about wraps up this review of RetroMania Wrestling on the Nintendo Switch. Don't forget to hit that like button if it helped you out, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game and the review in the comment section below, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel as I upload new Nintendo Switch reviews and content every few days. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.